We are live. We got here. Sorry, everybody. I was having some internet issues, so I just had to like fully reboot my router. I unplugged and plugged in the Ethernet cord and everything again. The old Nintendo 64 trick. So we are on here now, and we are live. So appreciate you guys for being a little patient this week, but we got there. So welcome in everybody to the Week 4 Friday AMA on the Dynasty League Football Channel. I did throw. I think I'm going to be doing this moving forward, not so much in an attempt to um, limit the number of messages or comments that come in, but I am throwing this stream into sub only mode, so you can still view it if you're not a subscriber, but if you wanted to comment and ask a question, you have to be a subscriber for at least 60 seconds. So it's a 1 minute thing, so it's just a way to be like, hey, I appreciate the support, subscribe to the channel, and then that way I know that you are a subscriber, and then I'll answer the question. So not trying to be petty or anything, or just cater to sub counts. But I think it's just a smart thing moving forward. And if it helps grow the channel, then it helps grow the channel. But yeah, so we're here. And let's just dive right into it since I'm like 10 minutes late. Athlete critique, 12-team Superflex start 8 Daniels owner. If Daniels is out again, do I go Mariota at Atlanta or Rodgers versus Minnesota? To me, I would go with Marcus Mariota. He has the rushing upside. Atlanta is an easier defense than Minnesota is. They're not traveling to Ireland. So I would go with Marcus Mariota. I do have Paulson's rankings up, and he has Mariota as QB 14 and Rodgers at QB 30. So there's a pretty substantial difference there between the two. So I would go Marcus Mariota, and Paulson says that as well. Peter, who are some pivots that you'd consider moving T. Higgins for, even if it means adding something on top to get it done? Feel like anything worth value for this season may end up having to be an overpay. Great question. T. Higgins certainly, I think, is a fine sell right now for contenders because of Jake Browning and the inconsistencies of the offense. I'm sure T. Higgins is going to have some pretty fine games, but it's not going to be, like I said, really anything consistent, or maybe even not anything phenomenal. Maybe he gets, maybe his ceiling now is 15, 16 fantasy points if he scores a touchdown, but that might just kind of be it. So I'm in on selling off of T. Higgins. If you're looking for other wide receivers or running backs that come to mind, that's running backs or wide receivers, the first name that came to my head was like Ricky Pearsall. I think that's a pretty solid pivot. You could look at, maybe you could buy low on I don't even know if it's a buy low, but like moving over to like a Kyron Williams kind of running back. I was trying to pull up Keep Trade Cut. T. Higgins is still wide receiver 22 on KTC. Pearsall's the wide receiver 2020, so that's a pretty solid flip. Zay Flowers is in there too. Kenneth Walker. You could, this probably doesn't help you this year, but from a dynasty standpoint, Travis Hunter's probably not a bad option. Matthew Golden could be a tier down. Scadaboo, Metcalf, Chuba. Those are kind of like in the same range. If you're talking about adding picks, if you wanted to add and move up to, that's where you probably move up to Kyron Williams, move up to Rashee Rice. If you've got to pay like a second or like a borderline first kind of a player to move up to one of those players. Maybe you can move up to a Judkins, buy low on Lab McConkey if people are a little worried about his production as like the wide receiver 3 right now behind Keenan and Quinshon Judkins. Or not, I looked at Quinshon Judkins' names. Quentin Johnston behind both of those guys. So if you can buy low on Lab, maybe you can even buy low on BTJ if you wanted to move up from T. Higgins. It's just kind of tough because T's not in a good spot value-wise or production-wise to where he's going to be demanding a lot. So you'd have to add something pretty substantial probably to get to Lad or BTJ, because if they're all going to produce similarly, because Lad and BTJ aren't producing well either, you'd rather have the younger guys still from a long-term standpoint. So you probably got to add something pretty substantial. I would add a first to T. Higgins to get to BTJ or Lad McConkey. And then probably I don't think I would add a first to get to Rashee Rice. I would consider it. But if it was like a player that's kind of like a first right now, I probably wouldn't add a first to move to Kyron. That would probably be a second round pick to move to Kyron, to move to Josh Jacobs. Maybe you could, if you wanted to buy on AJ Brown, that could be a second. Uh, I would pay a second to move to Pearsall. I'd pay maybe a late second ish to move to Walker if you wanted to do that, just to move over and have a more productive asset. Uh, yes, I realize I'm competing with Paulson's live episode. I will say I've been doing this longer. They started doing that last year, and I've been doing this for more than that. So they're competing with me. That's the way I see it. Antonio, happy Friday, my man. 12-team PPR Superflex Dynasty League. My quarterbacks are Allen, Stroud, and Caleb. I sent the 0-2 Joe Burrow owner Stroud in my first for Joe to lock down the stack with Jamar Chase. Good move. Great move. I absolutely love that. I think it's, and I don't think you're focusing too much on next year's value. I think that that is a tremendous deal. That if you are a team right now that is in a position to where you are more focused maybe on 2026, or even if you have a good quarterback room like Antonio has right now, he's got Josh Allen and Caleb Williams. Caleb certainly seems to be a better quarterback too than CJ Stroud is right now, and a top 12 dynasty quarterback. Um, so you have those two options for this year to continue competing, and then you can just figure it out with Superflex during both of their bye weeks if you wanted to start a positional player. Don't necessarily need to start another quarterback. But then you bought Stroud in a first for you paid that for Joe Burrow. I think that's phenomenal for the future value, because then you're going to go into next year with Allen, Burrow, and Caleb, and then you could do all sorts of different things with that. You could flip Burrow for an ROI on whenever he's healthy and back. You could keep him to have with the Jamar Chase stack, as you said. Then flip Caleb Williams. Maybe Caleb ends up being a really good quarterback, and then you want Burrow and Caleb, and then now Josh Allen becomes. I don't want to say he's becoming expendable as like the top one or top two fantasy and dynasty quarterback in the NFL right now, but you would get an absolute haul for Josh Allen if you wanted to keep Burrow and Caleb. So you got a lot of different options, but I think this is a phenomenal buy low for you uh, for Joe Burrow. Um, and I would highly recommend this to a lot of other teams. I feel like we had a conversation all like last week about what do you do if you're a contender and you lost Joe Burrow, but we didn't have that conversation of what if you're in a league where the Burrow owner is a contender and he lost Burrow and you're not a contender. Then you can go out and buy Joe Burrow for that kind of a value. I think that's very solid. And I love this deal phenomenally. Tyler with the 4.99 super chat. Thank you so much, man. We got a start sit question here. Started Trey Tucker. Is that Io Manor or Romeo Dobbs? I'm thinking Tucker. Is that what we're going here? Trey Tucker, I'm assuming that's Io Manor, or Romeo Dobbs. The autocorrect gets hit hard. Tucker, I think, is a better play than Romeo Dobbs. Just like Dobbs, he has a fantastic matchup. They're playing against the Dallas Cowboys, and this could be a matchup where you see a couple times a year that Romeo Dobbs has like 7 for 70 and a touchdown. And that can certainly happen against the Cowboys this week. I almost wonder though if there's a world where the Packers are smacking them so much and Dobbs was not a part of them going up early. It was a lot of Josh Jacobs, maybe Matthew Golden finds the end zone. Maybe it's Tucker Kraft. They have a lot of other weapons too. So if they do jump out ahead and they're not going to pass as much and they just kind of salt the game away with Josh Jacobs, maybe that's not a good thing for Romeo Dobbs either. So I'm on board with sitting Romeo Dobbs here in this whole entire kind of start sit decision. Now Trey Tucker, and I'm assuming that that's Alec Iomanor. I like Alec Iomanor a lot this week. He gets a Texans defense that may not have Derek Stingley. So that's very beneficial to not only Calvin Ridley, but also Alec Iomanor, because if Stingley was going to be on Ridley, but now they got to move their other cornerback onto him, and then Alex getting the cornerback 3 or something. That's pretty solid. I think his ceiling is maybe a little bit lower than Trey Tucker's, but Trey Tucker's floor I think is a lot lower than Alex. So it just kind of, I think it depends on what you need more. Um, do you need the ceiling of Trey Tucker in a very what seemingly is a positive matchup against the Bears defense at home, or do you just need solid production and just some points based on matchup if they had anybody last night or anything like that, um, to where maybe you go towards Ellick. I'm not opposed to starting Trey Tucker. I think it's just more upside versus floor. If you wanted to ask Paulson, Paulson has Ellick as the wide receiver 50, and he's got Trey Tucker as the wide receiver 36. So he would say to start Trey Tucker. He's got him projected for 9.5 fantasy points. I mean, Ellick, he's got him projected for 8. So it's a 1.5 difference, but I think Ellick is um, slightly safer. Whereas Tucker, in a good matchup, maybe it goes to Jacoby, maybe it goes to Bowers, but I think his ceiling's a lot higher. So that's kind of really super long answer, but I was trying to dive into it more because you paid for the super chat. So I appreciate that so much. Um, to where I'm good with leaning on Trey Tucker. Paulson says Tucker, you were already thinking Trey Tucker. I'm good with that decision because I think that game could be really fun. The Raiders Bears game, with two kind of mediocre to subpar defenses and then good offensive showings. And I've also bet on Geno Smith having more than 250 passing yards. So you would think if that hits, then Trey Tucker would also have a pretty solid game too. But I also like Alec. I bet on his receiving yards. He's at 33. Um, who is John Paulson? Chat, help me out. So John Paulson is like the main fantasy analyst for our sister website, 4for4. And 4for4 focuses mainly on redraft. So he is the main analyst over there who does all the weekly projections and creates all the rankings. So all the rankings that you see over there from a redraft standpoint are from John Paulson. He's one of the most accurate rankers in the entire industry, has won multiple awards over the past 10 plus years for rankings accuracy from Fantasy Pros. Has won a lot of championships, obviously. So that's why I lean on him a lot for start sit decisions too, just because of how accurate he is. And we're also, I say it's our sister site. We're all under the same umbrella, owned by the same company. 4for4 has the redraft audience. DLF has the dynasty audience. And I do content with Paulson too. So that's John Paulson. Yeah. So you follow 4for4. That's it. That's him. Any of their rankings or anything like that, that's John. Tyler with the $2 super chat again. Best person to start Lost Lamb and Evans between. I'm assuming this is Io Manor. It has to be. So Paulson says Trey Tucker. I'm on board with that one too. Unless you just really wanted a nice floor play, then it's Ellick. In my opinion, I think Ellick is a better floor play than Tucker. But I'm on board with starting Trey Tucker this week. And what I said was hopefully a very fun matchup. No, he's not. But I appreciate all the super chats, man. $9 worth of super chats. I greatly appreciate that support. So hopefully we're making the right call for you here too between Paulson and I as I'm reading off Paulson's rankings. So Trey Tucker, final answer, Tyler. Got to scroll back up. Paul, any tips for my team? 8 team start 3 quarterback. Holy crap. Start 4. I mean, it makes sense. It's a 8 team. Stroud, Caleb. This team does it feel weak in an 8-team league? Like I feel like you have a lot of like solid players, but you don't really have many studs. And I feel like in an 8-team league, even though you start this many, so you're starting 3, 6, 10, 13. What's 13 times 8? 104. So that's the So that's equivalent to a start 8 in a 12-team league, which makes start 8 or 9 in a 12-team league, which makes sense. To where like if this was a 12-team start 8 league, I would I would be telling you to prioritize your starters. And this is very similar because you start more players, but you have fewer teams in your league, so you should be able to roster more elite starters. So that's where I feel like I'm looking at this, and I like Kyron. I like Amari and Hampton a lot. I like ETN and Mason. I like Ted McMillan. Garrett Wilson's fine. I like Emeka Ibuka. I like Marv's fine. Devon Smith's fine. Laporta's fine. Pitts is fine. I'm just saying the word fine a lot. Like Stroud is bleh. Caleb's fine. He's pretty solid. But like you just don't have any oomph. And I feel like you need a little bit more oomph to win this league. So I would be recommending pretty similar things to where if this was a 12 team start 8 to where maybe I would try to consolidate a little bit more and see if I can at wide receiver, can you get to Amon Ra? Can you get to um like neighbors or uh I'm trying like maybe you could buy low on CD Lamb right now if somebody else needs a couple starters. At like the running back position, I think you're fine because you only need to start 3 of them and you have 4, so one of them could be your flex. I would like to upgrade the quarterback spot a little bit too, um, just to get off of CJ Stroud. I don't love CJ Stroud. I'm really good with Caleb, but you have to start 3 quarterbacks, so I kind of want like one good guy or great guy. So that's where I feel like this team is it's just a little lacking. Even like it's an 8-team league, and I feel like that 8-team league should be a little bit more like impactful in your starters, and you just have like a lot of like solid players. And maybe that is the play. That could be the play with the number of players that you actually need to start, but with how few teams there are in your league, there's got to be a couple teams I think that have to be better. And that's where I think that you're not there yet. And how can you get there by getting those more elite kind of players? Trying to put Stroud plus for Burrow, how much would you be willing to pay up? Well, Athlete Critique was able, or not, Peter was able to do, nope, rather wrong. Antonio, gosh, Friday. Antonio was able to do that with a first, and I'd be willing to pay that. I would add, if it's a first and a second, if it's a first and some of your other depth players or something like that to kind of move over to Burrow. I'd be willing to do all that just because there should be I think there should be a slight discount, not a massive discount, but if the other person's like really needing a quarterback because they lost Joe Burrow, like they should be willing to take a slight, you know, 10% hit on Joe Burrow's value. He's not the QB 5 in Dynasty anymore. Maybe he's the QB 7 or 8. Um, and to where that might be you might be able to close that gap a little bit easier from going from Stroud. So I would try it with the first, see where that gets you, first and second. First and some other like depth player if he's competing and you want to move off of um, one of your really good, like if you want to move off of Jordan Mason and a first for with Stroud to go get Burrow. I'm cool with that. If they need a tight end, they want Pitts, something along those lines, I think is where the CJ Stroud uh to Joe Burrow value lies. Do, 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 do. Ken picked up Gadsden and Giddens for Thornton and LaQuint Allen in a half PPR dynasty a couple days ago. Feels like a nice small win. I love it. The fact that DJ Giddens is on your waiver wire, I think, is a little crazy still. He should be rostered in every single league out there because he is the primary handcuff to Jonathan Taylor. And I know JT is doing phenomenal things right now, and he can continue doing that. But we've seen him have an injury history over the past few years. And we've seen specifically the backups behind Jonathan Taylor to still be very valuable for fantasy football in the weeks that they get the start, whether it was Trey Sermon or Deion Jackson or Zach Moss or whoever it was. So if anything were to happen to JT with the way that this Colts offense is cooking right now, primarily because of Jonathan Taylor, but they're still cooking. Man, being able to have DJ Giddens as a stash just in case is phenomenal. And then Gadsden, I'll always support I would have told you to drop LaQuint Allen for Gadsden like 2 weeks ago. I would have actually told you to pick up Giddens for LaQuint Allen like 2 months ago, and then I would have probably tried to find a way to stash Gadsden. But the fact that you're still able to do that right now is fantastic, dude. How much you be willing to add on top of AJ Brown to go get Jettas? Impatient JJ owner in my league is a huge Eagle fan, so I think there might be a slim opening to make something happen. I would be willing to pay a first. AJ Brown plus a first to go get Jefferson. You get off of the AJ Brown train if you don't want to be on it anymore. He's an Eagles fan, so he gets, his Eagle. And then you get Justin Jefferson, who's, like 2 or 3 years. No, he might be he might be only a year. How much older is AJ Brown compared to Justin Jefferson? Jefferson is 26.3 and AJ Brown is what, 28? Yeah, so almost 2 years older. So you down tier 2 years, you get obviously the eliteness of Justin Jefferson. Hopefully JJ McCarthy can figure things out and they can actually get going into where Justin Jefferson is continuing to produce like he has been for the past 5 or 6 years, basically his whole career. So I'd be willing to pay a first on top of AJ Brown. I don't know if I would really go much more than that, but a first on top of AJ Brown, I think is a pretty solid starting offer. If you want to try to go less than that, if you really think that you can get him, I'm on board. Anything less than a first is phenomenal. And then thoughts on Jaden Daniels has officially and Terry McLaurin are now officially ruled out. Chris Godwin is questionable, as will Baker Mayfield, but they're all trending in the right direction. Boy, if Baker doesn't play Sunday, that sucks. But he should play, and it sounds like Godwin's going to play. And then Daniels and McLaurin are now officially out. So I would play Mariota for sure. Athlete critique. And then Debo gets a nice bump as well. Thoughts on Trey Benson last night, though? Thought he looked okay. Like the dump offs, but wish he had more carries. Yeah, I think we were talking about it a little bit in the YouTube Discord, to where I was encouraged by Benson's usage throughout the majority of the night. Amari DiMarcado had all 4 of his touches on the final drive, and then of course scored the touchdown. And then was utilized a ton on third down. So DiMarcado seems like he's a third down back, which is fine. We knew coming out of college that Trey Benson was not this like prolific pass catcher. It was nice that he had 4 or 5 receptions. So him getting those little dump offs are nice kind of little PPR buffers, even if he's not doing much with it. But it's nice to see him being utilized in that way. And then, I mean, the rush attempt thing is just they were down basically that entire game. Like they kicked the field goal to start the game, then they went down 7-3 because Kenneth Walker ran all over them, and then AJ Barner scored that touchdown on their first drive. Then they were just down for the vast majority of the night, and especially for that second half, they didn't really have many opportunities to run the ball because they needed to catch up. They were down by 2 scores. So I think in games where Arizona is in more neutral situations or winning, Trey Benson will still be a very solid start. And in games where they're losing, I still think that he's a fine start, especially if he's going to be getting those dump off passes more often than not. Even with DeMarcado's usage, Benson's dump offs are fine. Like I said, PPR buffers. So I was encouraged. I would still flip Trey Benson for a first round pick. I don't know if that's possible today based on last night, if people were a little bit disappointed in his usage. But I know it was possible beforehand, because I've talked to a couple of people who said that they were actually able to sell Trey Benson for a first, because they had him because they had James Conner, but then they sold Benson on the hype before they even saw him. So that seems to have worked out. So I am encouraged, but I think the hype was a little overinflated slightly, but we'll still see. I mean, he's got the remainder of the season to continue going, and I'm sure that their schedule isn't like insanely difficult. I typed in Chargers or Cardinals schedule, and it gives me the St. Louis Cardinals. That's not who I want. See, like they play the Titans next week at home, so like we could find out pretty quickly what Trey Benson's ceiling is in a home situation against one of the worst teams in the league. Then they played the Colts, then the Packers. That's a yikes. Then they get the Cowboys, though, Seahawks again, Niners, Jaguars at home, Bucks, Rams, Texans, Falcons. So their playoff schedule, uh, Texans, Falcons, Bengals. That's for the fantasy playoffs. Is pretty enticing for Trey Benson. And then, like I said, they get the Titans next week. They get the Cowboys in a couple weeks. Jaguars at the that looks like the Thanksgiving weekend maybe. So there's opportunities and there's games for sure for Benson to have really good games on top of floor games against the Colts and the Seahawks again and the Niners and the Bucks and the Rams, leading into that really juicy playoff schedule. So uh and then Eric says, I think I'm done with Kyler. Was thinking of tossing out a Kyler and Bryce Young for CJ Stroud and Garrett. Well, I mean, I would take Stroud and Garrett Wilson there. I also Christian gets the Kyler frustration, but not sure that's an upgrade, especially giving two quarterbacks and getting a struggling guy like Stroud. I would take Stroud and Garrett Wilson in this one. I would take Garrett Wilson over Bryce Young and Kyler and Stroud. I feel like they're in the similar place right now, but Stroud has so much more of a leash because he's like 5 years younger that I would rather have CJ Stroud um, for the long term. If you and I have felt the same way as well. Like I am pretty done with Kyler Murray. And I was also getting done with Marvin Harrison Jr. He looked good last night for the most part. Um, and I just wish, man, I really just wish they would target Marvin Harrison Jr. like that every single night. He had 10 targets. Why don't you just do that? Why don't you just continue to throw to Marvin Harrison Jr.? And more often than not, good things should happen, especially if you're giving him opportunities to get easy catches just to move the chains. And then, they had that 16-yard touchdown last night. So it's just, it works more often than not. You just got to throw Marvin Harrison Jr. Then I would be all on board Marv every single week if he was getting 8+ targets weekly. But yeah, dude, that Cardinals team is just so aggravating to watch. They have to fire Gannon and Petzing at the end of the year. I think they really do. And then I could be more optimistic maybe, but I think I'm starting to be done with Kyler as well. He gets it done from fantasy standpoint because of his rushing and he throws enough to do it and he throws a touchdown. So he's like good enough. But man, it's just I don't want to be on the ride anymore. Ken has a quick redraft start sit, 2 wide receivers in a flex between London, Ibuka, Odunze, Kamara, non PPR. So Odunze, check. He's an auto start, so we got to do 2 more. Do you start Kamara? I think I would start Ibuka. If Baker plays, if Baker doesn't play, I would probably sit Ibuka then. If something wild happens over the weekend, he's questionable, but they said that he's trending towards playing. So assuming that Baker's in, I'll play Ibuka. And I think I would play London as well. I like the volume of Alvin Kamara, but against Buffalo, and he didn't get much receiving work last week. He only has one good game of receiving work with Spencer Rattler this year. That was in week 2, but week 1 and week 3 he didn't have much of anything. To where I might go with Drake London. Let's see what does Paulson say. I'd imagine that he has Odunze the highest. I'm in flex rankings right now. Odunze is flex 24. Ibuka is flex 42. London is flex 37, and Kamara is flex 46. So Paulson agrees. He has Kamara ranked the lowest of these 4, but he's only 0.2 of a fantasy point projected behind Ibuka and London. They're both projected 12.1. Kamara is projected 11.9. This is in half PPR. I guess I could change it to non PPR, huh? Odunze is still at the top. Ibuka is lower. London is slightly lower, and then Kamara is so he's got Kamara third highest in the rankings. Whenever he's got him above Ibuka, just because of the standard. I don't know. I don't know if I trust that. So Paulson would tell you to sit to sit London against where did he go? Against Washington. Yeah. And then play Kamara, Ibuka, and Odunze. I think Odunze's an auto start, so we're just gonna move off of him. I would start Ibuka with Baker Mayfield. I'm good with that. And then if you want to trust the volume of a running back in a standard league with Kamara, I'm on board with that too. But I just feel like that volume might not be efficient. He hasn't been very efficient on the ground. And if he's getting, 17 carries for 50 yards, that's 5 points. But is he going to score? I don't know. Can London have a better game? Maybe. I'm good with Kamara. I'm good. I'll follow with Paulson. Ibuka, Dunze, Kamara. Antonio has another league, 12-team Superflex PPR, half tight end premium, London, BTJ, Nico, Devonta, JSN, nice. Should I pivot off of any of the underperforming big names for other positional help or stay the course? Personally, in a vacuum, I feel like you just stay the course. I'm assuming that you're talking about BTJ specifically, and then maybe a little bit of London, maybe a little bit Devonta as well. But I feel like you kind of knew that Devonta was going to be inconsistent, just in general. And then I'm hopeful for the Eagles offense that they throw a little bit more, or at least they're willing to throw a little bit more based on the success that they had last week against the Rams throwing the ball. Like Hurts is a good quarterback, and he can definitely, when you have the ability to throw to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, I think you should do that more often than not. So that's my hope that that they see that and they do that moving forward. In a vacuum, I'm not concerned about moving off of any of these guys from a dynasty standpoint. If you want to like move BTJ over to, it's just kind of hard because like all the other good pivots you already have. Like I would have said, try to move BTJ over to Nico. You probably don't want AJ Brown because you have Devonta Smith. You probably don't want to go buy Ladd because he's also underproducing. You can go try to buy Tedero McMillan if you wanted. That would be another. That's like a good dynasty aspect kind of thing. If you wanted to try to go buy Odunze, like I'm fine with it. From BTJ, go to BTJ to Odunze or BTJ to Tet. If you wanted to try to buy low on Lamb, you could try that too. But I just think that I would stay the course, and my hope is that BTJ figures things out with Trevor Lawrence in this offense. My hope is that the Eagles throw a little bit more, and my hope is that Penix just also kind of figures things out with Drake London. Like the issue is not talent with any of these guys. It's just everything else is around them sucks. But those situations can change really, really quickly. Like if the Falcons decide to bench Kirk Cousins or bench Michael Penix for Kirk Cousins, then Cousins could elevate Drake London back up to an elite wide receiver. If the Jaguars just fire Shane Waldron next week, and then they're just like, you know what, we just got to give the ball to BTJ a lot, then they could do that. Nico's fine, JSN's fine. I would just probably stay the course unless you get like a really good offer. There's a lot of questions in here. Sub-only mode did not help with the questions. I didn't think it would, but team's been struggle in 2 weeks. Flex spots. Team's been struggle in 2 flex spots with start sits. I need a water break. Hold on a second. I haven't eaten anything either yet today, so the brain calories might be a little hurting. Lots of depth with Waddle, Olave, DK, Pollard, or soon Godwin. No team's interested in package. Be patient till buys and injuries. I'd be patient with DK Metcalf. I think you got to be patient with Chris Godwin. There's nothing really you can do there. Pollard's been really good from an NFL standpoint. It's just he's on a bad team. Waddle, I'm 100% good with trading off of Waddle, and I'm 100% good with trading off of Olave too. Olave is low key like your top producer, just because of the amount of targets that he's getting, but he's not doing anything with it. Like he wishes he had Wan'Dale Robinson's average yards per reception from last year. Like Olave's on pace for under 1,000 yards on 200 targets right now. That is ridiculous how inefficient that is. But from a PPR standpoint, when you're catching 10 passes, you're going to get 10 PPR points, and then 50 yards is 5. That's 15 fantasy points on the end of the day in a PPR league. So you probably need to just keep Olave in your flex spot. But if you're able to trade off two of these guys, Waddle and Olave specifically, and if somebody needs a running back, like they lost James Conner, they don't have a rookie producing, and they're able to trade off of Pollard, I'm fine with that too. To maybe try to upgrade some of these spots. Um, but I'm still okay with being patient on DK specifically. Got to be patient on Godwin. Pollard is super fine. Just to throw in there, he's going to get the volume and he'll be okay. But Waddle and Olave, I am very comfortable with moving off of both of them. You could combine both of them and see if you can get up to just one really good player. Like maybe you get like Rashee Rice or something like that for both of them. That could work. There we go. 10-team redraft league for Lex Hawkinson or Fannin this week, PPR. My pick for that would be TJ Hawkinson. I had him as a sneaky start in my video with John Paulson on the 444 YouTube channel. We saw what Hunter Henry did last week against the Steelers defense, and Hawkinson seemed to play well with Carson Wentz. So I'm hopeful that with Wentz kind of being willing to throw it a little bit more, that and also finding Hawkinson against a bad defense, I'll go with Hawkinson over Fannin this week. And then, oh man, I would drop Travis Hunter. I probably wouldn't drop Fannin. I'm cool with dropping Travis Hunter in a redraft league right now. It just sucks. And you're not dropping Daniels. I wouldn't drop Hop because I'm starting him this week, and I wouldn't drop Fannin at this moment. So I think you got to drop Travis Hunter for the time being, and then pick up Caleb Williams. That it sucks. That's where we're at with Travis Hunter. But man, I cannot give you very many reasons to hold on to him outside of just saying the word upside in a redraft format. So I think Hunter's the cut right there. Would you trade Njoku and Ridley for Pittman in a mid-round pick? Yes, I would. I'd rather have Pittman than Ridley for sure. And then if you get, like a second for David Njoku, I'm totally on board with that. Jalen Warren is added to the injury report with a knee injury. Uh-oh. Caleb Johnson time. Just kidding. It's Trey Sermon time, probably, if Jalen Warren doesn't play. Jennings is the easy answer for me. If he plays, I'm hopeful that he plays. I'm trying to see if I'm going to get any news about that because I'm also hinging on a Jennings start-sit decision this weekend as well. So I would play Jennings if he plays. If not, is this the same league? If this is the same league, I would drop Troy Franklin for Caleb Williams instead. If it's not, I would want to start. I want to start Travis Hunter over Troy Franklin this week. I don't love it, but I would do it. And then I would drop Troy Franklin for Caleb if this is the same league. If it's not, and this is a different league, I would just play Jennings if he plays. If not, I would play Travis Hunter. Is how I would go about it. Kyler Fields, Penix are my Superflex quarterbacks. Rest of the team is pretty low, but I feel like my quarterbacks will cost me a title. What would you recommend to try to pivot or upgrade? Oh, man. And it's tough to trade for quarterbacks in this league. You've got Bucky, Hampton, Mason. Nice. Jason, Amon-Ra, Nico, Marv. Nice. To me, Fields is the main sell. I'm fine with keeping Kyler just because he's probably your best fantasy quarterback. I feel like most people are kind of done with him, and you've got the stack with Marv for whatever that's worth. It worked last night. So I think I would try to sell off of Fields just because he's the least valuable to me in terms of dynasty, but he's also the one guy that people still believe in. So if you're able to trade, man, I don't want to touch any of your core pieces. You're probably gonna if this is dynasty, you're gonna have to use picks. So Fields in a first. Can you buy low on Dak Prescott right now with CeeDee Lamb out? Can you man, you're gonna have to find somebody who either really needs quarterbacks, or has a couple quarterbacks like has 3 or 4 quarterbacks like you do, and then one of them just happens to be like a good option. Like maybe you could buy low on Brock Purdy with his injuries. Maybe that's just going over and getting Jared Goff. Maybe that's going over and getting Dak Prescott. Um, maybe it's I mean, Sam Darnold's not even looking all that bad either. Like maybe you could trade Fields for Darnold and figure out some other stuff around that too. I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to get up any higher than Purdy, like to get into like Bone. Maybe you could buy low on Bo Nix. That's maybe the only other option, but um, any higher than that, like I feel like it's gonna be hard to get up to Jordan Love. It's gonna be hard to get to Caleb right now, and then you're not getting May or Herbert or anything like that unless you substantially add some massive pieces. That I probably wouldn't really want to do with your other running backs and wide receivers. So I think it's got to be picks, and I think you've just got to go. You got to incrementally climb the ladder here and try to see if you can hit on somebody who's maybe not producing as much right now, like a Brock Purdy or like a Dak Prescott, but then have the upside to produce a lot better for the remainder of the year and then long term. Maybe you could take a shot on Jackson Dart if you wanted to. I don't know if that manager would be even be willing to sell him. Um, but yeah, those are probably the names that I would look for to see if you can go up and buy one of those guys from Justin Fields. I'm fine with moving off of Penix as well. But Fields, I would give them the option. Do you want Fields or do you want Penix? I feel like most people would probably take Fields. So that's why a lot of that was on him. Genty, Bill, Ridley, Smith, Pickens, Jacoby need one flex, one wide receiver. I would go with man. I would go with Pickens and do you play Genty? I want Jacoby in this lineup. Um, and Pickens draws a Packers defense, but he's the wide receiver one now. I've thrown Bill out the window. I've thrown Ridley out the window, and I don't think Devonta Smith is a better start than the other two. So for me, this is between Genty, Pickens, and Jacoby. I want Jacoby in there. This is a full PPR league as well. Here, what does Paulson say about this? I bet you he's going to say Genty Pickens. Genty's got it flex 35. Pickens, he's got it flex 31. Oh, Myers at flex 26. So Paulson would say Myers and Pickens. That's where my head was initially because I think Jacoby Myers is a great play this week, and Pickens is just going to be the wide receiver one without Lamb. And then I don't think you want to play two Raiders in the same lineup. The Bears rush defense is really good or pretty good, I should say. And Genty's had major yards before contact issues. So that's where I was going initially. I just wasn't sure if that was the right play, but then Paulson kind of backed me up on it. Jacoby and Pickens for this one. Connor's got a 10x10 Superflex PPR reigning champ contender, but got offered a Buka and the 27 101 102 at worst for Gibbs. I would keep a Buka here. Not just because of I'm not like the biggest Jahmyr Gibbs fan. Like he's phenomenal. He's top 3 dynasty running back, but it's just like if you're going to pay up for an elite running back, I'd rather just pay up for Bijan. Or at this point, Jonathan Taylor, honestly, if that even means you get Jonathan Taylor for a little bit cheaper than Gibbs. And it's not even just so much just because you believe that that's the 2027 101 102 at worst. Like if that team is that bad, that could be a massively insane prospect if it's Jeremiah Smith. But I think I would just keep Ibuka on this one and ride it out. I'd rather have the wide receiver, I think, than the elite running back. And the other, yeah, I think I would take Ibuka and the 101 for this one. Final answer. I am retooling in a 12-team PPR tight end premium league. Was offered here we go. A late first, third, and JT for Jahmyr Gibbs. Do I take it or hold Gibbs, who has more long-term value? No, I would take it. So I would, man, at first added on to Jonathan Taylor for Jahmyr Gibbs. That's insanity in my opinion. No, I would take this because you're getting an equally talented or low key might be a better producer for this year in Jonathan Taylor versus Jameer Gibbs. So maybe in some world you make the playoffs and then Jonathan Taylor helps you potentially, win a title. That's like best case scenario. But then you're also getting the first round pick on top of it to where if you are retooling and your team isn't, isn't going to make the playoffs, but maybe you give it a shot with Jonathan Taylor still for the next couple of weeks. But if, by mid to end October, you're like, all right, I'm not there. Then you just sell Jonathan Taylor. So you're essentially turning, if you get 2 firsts for Jonathan Taylor, you essentially just turn Gibbs into 3 firsts for a retooling team like that. Or, you move JT over to a wide receiver that's going to help you more in the long term. Maybe you trade him for Brian Thomas Jr. plus, Lad McConkey plus, Drake London plus, or something right now because those players aren't producing. If you wanted to make that call right now because you don't think you're making the playoffs, I'm totally on board with that. But this is you have to take motorcycle just drove past my house. You have to take the Jonathan Taylor side on this one as a retooler. I would do this as a contender as well. There is no world, no team that you could convince me would be better off with the Jameer Gibbs side of this trade than the Jonathan Taylor side. Easy, JT. Grayson's got Herbert and a second and Rashee Rice for JSN. How did I do? I had no backup quarterback, so I got a new starter basically. I'm assuming this is a 1 quarterback league, which case I don't mind it. Like getting Rashee Rice and a second for JSN is solid if you believe in Rashee Rice. But then, if you got Justin Herbert thrown in there as well, who looks like he's the new, QB5 in Dynasty instead of Joe Burrow. I don't mind it. I don't mind this at all in a 1 quarterback league. I think it's pretty fair on both sides, though. Cody got offered Worthy for Reed in a late first and took it. Lost CD and needed a wide receiver. I'm contending. It's fine. I'm not a Xavier Worthy fan, so I probably would have kept the first and bought a better wide receiver. But it's okay. I don't completely hate it. Larson bought Geno Jones for cheap last week on a rebuilding team. Just have hope he plays himself into a Darnold or Geno contract, but with more upside than them. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I'd be curious, what did you pay for him? To see if I'm just curious what you paid for Daniel Jones on a rebuilder. Probably a second, maybe. Godwin seems to be trending towards playing, and you can see him. He's right up there. That's a Penn State Godwin jersey. I did have other jerseys of like NFL players that I really liked. So I had a Swift Lions jersey. I had a Allen Robinson Bears jersey. I had a Corey Davis Titans jersey. That was a yikes. I feel like I had somebody else. I don't remember. DJ Moore? Did I have a DJ Moore Panthers jersey? I might have. And then those jerseys just decided to, that's the thing with the NFL is these players can move around, all that stuff, and then it feels weird to have an old team's jersey up on your wall. So I said, hey, Penn State, they're forever going to be Penn Staters, so let me get them. So my guy Godwin sitting right there. And yes, it does seem like he's trending towards playing this week, which is a slight surprise to me. I thought that he would go another week. But I'm all on board, and especially with Evans out for a few weeks, if Godwin can kind of reassert himself as the wide receiver 1A, 1B, if he looks good, like that could be a really good fantasy asset for the remainder of the year. Pepe is a contender, top 2 team, and was offered Nico in a 27 first for my JSN. This is the exact same situation as the JT in a first for Jameer Gibbs. I don't see any world where I would not take the Nico in a 27 first side, especially if you think that's a mid to early first in 2027. You got to wait 2 years, yes, but that class is shaping up to be really good. And if it leans any earlier than mid to late, that's going to be a really good pick. I don't see much of a difference dynasty-wise between Nico and JSN. They're both phenomenal wide receivers. They're top 10 guys every single week. JSN's been producing like crazy, but Nico's had some really good games too. He's like the only startable option in Houston essentially every single week. So to me, both of those guys are in the same tier. You're getting a first-round pick added on top of Nico. I would take this in a heartbeat, man. Nico in a first. and don't feel bad about it whatsoever. Just accepted a trade of Javante for Drake London. Um, this is wow. Uh, I would take the Drake London side on this one for the remainder of the year. I'm assuming that this got to be redraft, right? Even still in redraft, I would take the Drake London side. If this is dynasty, sheesh. um, Nathan's in a rebuild. Would you rather have Nico and Sam Darnold or Joe Burrow in a second? Oh, as a rebuilder, I think I would rather have Burrow and the second. Not because I'm betting against Sam Darnold, but he just doesn't seem to have that extra ceiling, where Burrow can absolutely have that. It's removing points off of your roster as well. So then if you have, assuming that you have your first round pick, that can help you to get an earlier first round pick because you're removing the points of Darnold and Nico off your roster. You get Joe Burrow for the future. You get an added second, which isn't bad as well. I think I would take the Joe Burrow side on this one, um, for a rebuilding team. Uh, this is my other favorite thing. I'm trying to find the next question, but my other favorite thing is that uh, Christian's out here doing work, man, answering other people's questions. That's what I love about doing this AMA as well, is because it takes me so long to get through all these questions. I do try to get through all these questions, and I usually do. Um, so if you're waiting on me to answer your question, I will eventually get to it. But super chats get the question moved right to the top. Anyway, but other people will also answer. So you're kind of getting some input from other people in the community, who I have trained. And no, I'm just kidding. uh, but I like that you're not just sitting here waiting for me to answer. Other people are answering and giving their inputs as well. Where did I leave off? Mike, would you trade Travis Hunter in a mid first for Ibuka? Ah, I don't think I would. I still believe long term in Travis Hunter. And the fact that you have to give up a first to do it, I don't think I could do that for Ibuka right now. If it was a second, I'd be on board with it. But a first rounder, and you're saying it's a mid first, which could still be a pretty solid player next year. With the long term upside of Travis Hunter still, I would keep Travis Hunter in the first instead of Ibuka. Now if it's like if like I said, if it's Hunter and a second for Ibuka, I would take Ibuka. If it was Hunter and a first for Ibuka and a second, I would take the Ibuka side there too. I'm fine with that. But as this is right now with just the first added on top, I wouldn't do it. Marvin, 14 team, super flex, tight end premium start 8. I want Juwan Johnson. Is a single third enough? I have Jonnu Hawk and Aronde Gadsden. Nice. I don't think a single third is enough to get it done. I would absolutely pay that for Juwan Johnson though. 2/3 might be a more reasonable offer. Honestly, I think he's probably more of a second round pick at this point, late second, than he is kind of in these third round range. But if you can pay a single third, that's fantastic. If you pay 2/3, I still think that's a pretty good deal. Another massive truck just drove past my house. I don't know if the microphone picks it up, but it is loud right outside this window. But if you can buy Juwan Johnson for 1 to 2 to 3/3, I think that's totally fine. But you might have to pay a late second, especially given that that's a 14 team league, and a tight end premium. A late second in a 14 team league is more like an early third in a 12 team league. So you might have to pay a late second to get it done anyway. Now my wife's setting off the the smoke alarm downstairs. She's cooking lunch. What's going on in this household, man? Internet issues. Gosh. Do we start questioning Burrow's longevity at this point, being in Cincy? It's an interesting question, Christian. I think it's one that shouldn't just be completely discarded and thrown out. Um, I I personally, I'm not concerned at this point. I do really hope that they just start investing in the offensive line. But at this moment, I'm currently not concerned for him to like Andrew Luck or anything like that. Though I think that the probability is rising a little bit. Not to say it's anything substantial. Maybe it's like a 5 to 10% chance that he Andrew Lucks, or that he just has these kind of injury issues because they don't invest in the offensive line. So um, I think it's a small chance, but I think it's a non-zero chance. But I'm currently not worried about it. Um, yeah, this was Joe Burrow in the second. Um, PBR Dynasty, one quarterback start, 8. Anything I should do to help my team? One quarterback, you got Josh Allen, check. You've got McBride at tight end, check. All right, we're done with those two positions. Chuba, Judkins, Hendo, Benson, JCM. That's a pretty solid running back room. I like that a lot. Neighbors, London, JSN, Rice, Addison, Godwin. Man, um, no, I don't really think there is anything that you could do with this team right now. It's really really good. I mean, if you wanted to, maybe you could. So you start 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you wanted to, you could maybe throw out Kyle Pitts and try to see if you can upgrade one of your positions. I would probably look at upgrading like a Jordan Addison and a Kyle Pitts. I'm not sure if that's going to get you enough though. Um, maybe it is capitalize on the Trey Benson hype and then Benson and Pitts, and then you get a better player. Maybe that gets you a better wide receiver than Jordan Addison. Then you can flip Addison back for another running back. Maybe it's Pitts and Chuba for a better running back, although I think Chuba's pretty underrated still, and he's getting a lot of volume. And Chuba and Judkins holding down your top 2 running back spots while you're waiting for Travion Henderson to emerge. Benson holding down a spot too, maybe one of your flexes. Is while you're waiting for Travion Henderson, I think is phenomenal. You're starting Neighbors every week. You're starting JSN every week. London's probably in every more often than not. You're going to get Rashid Rice back here in a couple weeks. You get Godwin back this week. You get Addison back this week. Man, this team is really really good. There's really not a lot that I would look at touching right now. And then maybe if you wanted to make moves at the end of October, kind of see where you're at, see where the NFL landscape is at, take a look at playoff schedules, understand which players are currently injured, maybe present a little bit of a buy opportunity, or you don't want to touch players that you would have bought right now, but then get injured over the next month that you saved yourself from buying. I think you just continue to wait and keep going throughout the remainder of the year and see where you're at come if you have a trade deadline or, as we kind of enter mid to late November and just kind of see where everything's at. And then you can try to make optimal moves to enhance your roster for the playoffs. Or maybe you don't need anything because this team's really good, dude. So congratulations on building out this team. Go win a championship, man. Cody's got Worthy coming back this week. Do I start him or play T or Shepard in the flex? Shepard seems safest unless Godwin is back. Um, man, yeah, I would probably I'd be fine throwing Xavier Worthy out there. They're gonna need him against Baltimore, I think. I mean, they just need him just in general. But if they wanted to beat Baltimore, they're gonna need some offensive output. Um, so I'm fine with throwing Worthy back out there this week. Over T Higgins, and Shepard is just like a PPR play. Like if you just wanted to have a safety of some points, Shepard could be fine, but I think Worthy still presents solid floor with ceiling that Shepard just does not have, and that T Higgins probably doesn't have either. So I'm fine with throwing Xavier Worthy out there. Larson's got a rebuilding team, have Daniels and JJ McCarthy. Would you trade Daniels to Burrow to gain more assets? What would the difference be as Daniels just got rolled out week 4? I think it's got to be at least a first to move off of Daniels to go down to Joe Burrow. And maybe the Burrow manager is willing to pay that. Maybe not this week, but maybe it's next week because of Jaden Daniels being out. honestly, I think the better question might be, could you trade JJ McCarthy plus to go get Joe Burrow? I know you're rebuilding and adding and condensing assets probably isn't the most ideal move, maybe, but if you could maneuver it and get it done, it might be possible. Um, but I think you would need a pretty substantial amount on top of Burrow to be able to be willing to do this because Jaden Daniels is really good. Um, so I think it's got to be a Burrow and a first if you're doing that to trade him down. And if you're not getting that, I don't think it's worth it. Oh yeah, but now we got down to the Kyler talk. uh, Eric's done with Kyler. I think I kind of am too. He moved into seventh in fantasy points by a quarterback in points per game. Wait, actually, Christian, is that all time? I didn't see this before. Or is that just like current? Like of the current players right now, all time points per game. Like all time, or all time out of players that are currently playing. So like he'd be behind Josh Allen and Lamar, and then he's behind Aaron Rodgers for all time. Um, but man, I gotta think that out of all time that like he can't be seventh highest. Um, like Drew Brees had some incredible years. Brady had some incredible years. Peyton had some incredible years. Uh, Cam Newton, yeah, incredible years. Andrew Cooper on Twitter. I just want to know the stat. This stat is so intriguing to me. Tonight's game moves Kyler Murray up to seventh all time in fantasy points per game ahead of Aaron Rodgers. He's behind Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Deshaun Watson, Andrew Luck, Kyler Murray at 19.47 fantasy points per game. Rodgers, Burrow, Hurts round out the top 10. Then you've got Herbert, Cam, Russ, Dak, Breeze. That's your top 15. Wow. But yeah, he was already higher than that because he had fewer than that last night. So, so he couldn't have moved up with a fewer average game. So yes, he is seventh all time. That is incredible. In 85 games, man, Kyler Murray, dude, he just needs. He had such a good run from 2019 to 2022. It was so good. Oh man, Philip traded Christian Watson in a third for 27. Oh, that's a fantastic move, Philip. Yep, Christian Watson. I'm surprised anybody was even willing to buy him, let alone for a second. That's incredible, dude. Would you trade Marvin Harrison Jr. for Rice even long term? Yes, I would. I'm willing to do that. I believe in Rasheed Rice still, and I'm still a little bit skeptical of Marvin Harrison Jr. Uh, I honestly think that you could maybe get Rice plus like a third on top of to do this, or a fun bench player at the end of his, like if he had Oronde Gadsden or somebody like that, or Torrey Horton, and you wanted to get Rice and one of those guys for Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that you could. Um, but I think I still prefer Rice over Marvin Harrison Jr., though I think that they're in the same tier. It's just kind of we need to see more from both players, and based on what I've already seen from Rasheed Rice, it's about him getting back to that after the injury. Whereas Marv is just like we know that the talent is there, we just need to see him actually put it all together. So I'd rather go with Rice over Marvin Harrison Jr. And no, I don't think Cliff was all that bad. At least not for Kyler. I mean, Cliff's doing things for Jaden Daniels right now. So Fannin or Andrews this week need floor in a 0.75 tight end premium. I'd probably go Fannin. Um, isn't Mark Andrews, I think historically is really bad against the Chiefs, or am I thinking of Kelsey being historically really bad against the Ravens? Can't remember. Game logs, career. But I like going with Harold Fannin against let's see. So here are Mark Andrews' stat lines versus the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season. He's played 5 games. 2 targets, 0 catches. 7 targets, 3 catches, 15 yards. 8 targets, 3 receptions, 22 yards. 5 targets, 5 receptions, 57 yards. And then last year, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 14 yards. So his ceiling is 10 PPR points, although in whatever that is in the 0.75. 5 for 55 is his ceiling. And his floor, technically, he had a 0 catch game. That was in his rookie year, though. But the other 3 games, 2 for 14, 3 for 22, 3 for 15. That's Mark Andrews against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then his one game that he played against them in the playoffs, he was also 2 for 15, and that was last year. So, yeah, Andrews against the Chiefs this week. Nah, I'll go with Harold Fannin, and just kind of hope that, especially if you need floor and Fannin gets a couple of those little cheapo dump offs. Detroit's defense has been a little bit susceptible to tight ends as well. So I would go with Harold Fannin. I think I might bet some Mark Andrews unders based on that. On those numbers. Sheesh. Jefferson, McLaurin, Chase Brown, Pacheco. Help. Did I miss a question, or is there a question to be asked? Or you start sitting this? This is a rough team, though. Man, and that team was looking so good like 4 weeks ago. That sucks. Mooney, Shaheed, or Pacheco in the flex. There, I found it. Gross. I don't know. Paulson? Does Paulson have any strong feelings? Pacheco is flex 110. Darnell Mooney is flex 100. And Shaheed is flex 95. Paulson would tell you to start Rashid Shaheed. And I think that that's probably just a volume thing. They're going to have to throw no less than 60 times to keep up with the Buffalo Bills, and they will not keep up with the Buffalo Bills. But like Shaheed has also been a very cheap PPR producer as well. So I'm cool with that over Mooney and then over Pacheco and what could be a good game, but maybe not a high rushing volume game. Should I drop Fannin? My other tight ends are Njoku and Jawan and pick up Caleb Johnson or Dylan Sampson. No, I would hold on to Fannin. I wouldn't pick up Dylan Sampson. Seems like Jerome Ford kind of has that role, that pass catching role, and then Judkins has taken over as the one. And then honestly, there's a world where Fannin is better than David Njoku for the remainder of the year. So you might be dropping the wrong Browns tight end. So, but I would just hold on to all 3 tight ends for the moment. Is the Jacksonville offense really this bad, or is it the Shane Waldron effect? Should I be trying to buy BTJ and Hunter? I'm buying BTJ and Hunter from a dynasty standpoint. I don't know if it's necessarily a Shane Waldron effect. I mean, he is the passing game coordinator, but I just find that so weird that he would be this bad for them on the field when he's not directly calling plays. And he's not directly like designing the offense. Like he's not the offensive coordinator, and he's not the head. Like Liam Cohen, theoretically, as the head coach and former play caller, should be driving everything, and then their OC should also be in there. I mean, I get Waldron's like in the room, but like, man, to have that kind of effect to where he was the OC for Chicago and Seattle that killed another motorcycle drives by the house. Like I understand it to where like he was the OC for JSN and Odunze, so like his play calling and play designs can kill them. But like I just don't understand how his dirty little hands get into that for the game plan for the Jaguars, and then they listen to him over Liam. I just don't understand. But yes, I would be from a dynasty standpoint. I would 100% be buying Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, because they could be so much better. And then yeah, Christian, it could honestly be Trevor Lawrence too. That's another issue. But Lawrence, I think, is good enough to where if they actually have a capable offense, then I think that they could do it. It just doesn't seem like they have a very capable offense right now. What are your good tier up targets if you have T and Waddle and an expendable first that you're willing to move? Brian Thomas Jr. Perfect example. Rashee Rice might be another one. Uh, that might, depending on how the people feel about Waddle or T and that first round pick, that might be a little too high. Marv might be another one. Lad McConkey could be another player. BTJ, London, Tedero, McMillan, Odunze. Even Garrett Wilson isn't necessarily bad. If you wanted to move instead of the first, you could maybe try a second with either one of these two guys and go get Ricky Pearsall. I would be willing to try that. So I think those are the options that I would try, and see what you could do. Mariota for me this week. Thraxar. It's pretty easily Mariota. I think Mariota is like a pretty solid start. So more often than not, I'm probably going to pick him unless you have a legitimate guy. Tingley, AO, should I start Baker or drop Baker or Mandrews, Jawan to stream Caleb? Um, mm, 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 mm. I don't love. What's the difference between Baker and Caleb for Paulson? He's got Caleb at QB6 and he's got Baker at QB17 with a 3-point projection difference. That's pretty substantial. Now, do you drop one of the tight ends? I would not drop Jawan Johnson. Or are you dropping? You know what? Drop Baker. I'm cool with dropping Baker for Caleb Mayfield, because I'm assuming that even if Caleb was in a less than favorable spot, maybe you could find another streamer option, to where you could then drop Caleb. You might just be more in streamer territory right now, and Caleb might just be the really good streaming option for you, uh, in this current stint of games. Although they have the bye week next week too, so that kind of sucks. But I'm cool with dropping Baker now, picking up Caleb, and then dropping Caleb next week during his bye week for somebody else. Maybe it's Baker again. So I'm cool with that. I'm also cool with dropping Mark Andrews. If you're just going to start Juwan Johnson and you don't want to start Andrews this week, I'm cool with it too. But I'd probably rather stream the quarterback position. This is Caleb easily over Fields as well. Philip. This is that crazy league. Yes, I would take CeeDee Lamb in this one. Pretty easily. So I think that's a fantastic buy low. So I would take CeeDee Lamb in this, and your team gets even more insane. Oh man, just take CeeDee Lamb. And I would. You have Njoku and Kittle, or you have Njoku and Ingram. You want Kittle. I'm cool with taking Kittle for your first as well. And then maybe you could. It's kind of tough. I was trying to see if I can get you a Chase Brown or a Nick Chubb upgrade for another better. Maybe that's where you take a second or something like that, and then go address your running back position. But I think, or one of your tight ends, Njoku or Ingram, could get thrown packaged in with somebody else, and then you can upgrade your running back room. I would trade your first for Kittle here too. Trig was rebuilding. New developments make me think I'm now competitive. That's always so much fun. Need help at quarterback, Kyler, Darnold, and Penix. Um, Kyler, Darnold, and is this like a start sit decision for this week, Trig, or is this just like can we do something just in general? Oh, you didn't hit the enter button. Uh, this is the rest of the team. Yeah. So again, you might just Kyler and Darnold might be okay just to kind of hold on to it. Maybe if you wanted to, you have a lot of really good wide receivers. Um, so I could see in a world where if you wanted to dip, if you wanted to hold on to your 26 first, just in case something bad were to happen, um, I'm cool with it because you thought you were rebuilding. Um, if you want to hold on to your first, you could do that. But then maybe a Quentin Johnston is now uh expendable with all of your wide receivers. Maybe Travis Hunter is expendable with with all your wide receivers to where you package one or even two of them with Penix or Darnold or Kyler. But Penix or Darnold are probably the better to where they're probably the better guys to upgrade off of to where Kyler's then your QB2. And then you have a better quarterback ahead of Kyler. And then you can go get a better player. So Penix plus Hunter plus Quentin Johnston equals does that get you like a Jordan Love? That probably should get you Jordan Love. Um, does that get you man, does that get you any higher than that? Does that get you do you want to buy Caleb? Do you want to you could maybe just do one of them, Penix and Quentin Johnston or Penix and Travis Hunter. Does that get you Purdy? Darnold plus one of those guys, does that get you into Purdy, or maybe it still gets you into Love? Could you transition over to Dak Prescott while he's doesn't have CD Lamb for right now, but then he will have CD Lamb for the last like 10 games? Um, could you get to Baker maybe? Now that he's getting Godwin back, he'll get Evans back in a few weeks. He'll be at like kind of full strength. Those are the quarterbacks that I would probably try to see what I could do with. I think I would use Quentin Johnston and I would use Travis Hunter as ways to move up off of Penix and Darnold and see where that gets you. Um, and I'm on board with that. Maybe it gets you to Drake May. Maybe I don't know. Depends on what the Drake May situation is. With who what team he's on in your league, but maybe that gets you into the Drake May territory as well. Or it could be Bo Nix if you want to buy low on Bo Nix. I keep forgetting he's out there. So I think you got some options. See what you can do with all those guys. Would y'all trade Chase Brown for Judy and Pollard in Dynasty? I I don't think I would. I don't love Jerry Judy, so I could see myself doing this if Jerry Judy was a different wide receiver, kind of in a similar tier. But I don't love Jerry Judy. Pollard is totally fine, but he's still old. Um, Chase Brown's not that much younger than him anyway. But my hope is that with the volume that Brown is getting, and maybe they hold on to him for next year as well, and then that team is all good next year with Burrow back, that I think I would just hold on to Chase Brown for the moment, unless you're getting a different wide receiver that's kind of more in the Jerry Judy tier. Like where's like if it was a Jacoby Myers, I'd probably be a little bit more into it. If it was um, Michael Pittman, I would be more into it. If it was Chase Brown for like, I was gonna say Devontae Adams, but I don't think that gets done at all. Maybe if you wanted Tyreek and Pollard, I don't know. That's probably not. You're not getting. Those are the names that I would be looking at instead with Chase Brown. Or I don't know if he has any of those guys instead of Jerry Judy with Tony Pollard to be willing to do that. But I would hold on to Chase Brown for over this specific trade. Um, Not sure if Jawan Jennings is playing. Flex options are Tillman, Trey Tucker, or Dowdle. All right. Well, let's see. If Juwan Jennings is playing, I'll play him. Um, first, hold on. First, if situation, if somehow Chuba Hubbard is out, I will play Dowdle over everybody on this list. So I'm on board with that. I would play Dowdle over Juwan Jennings if Chuba's out. Um, if Chuba's in, I'm throwing Dowdle out. He's not even an option in this. To where then my next if statement is if Jennings plays, I would play Jennings. If Jennings is out, I would play Trey Tucker. So that would be my order. Dowdle if Chuba's out, Juwan if Chuba's in and Juwan is in. And if Chuba's in and Juwan is out, then it would be Trey Tucker. Hopefully that makes sense. I just got offered Genty for Kyron plus Pittman plus my third. Would you take it? Yes, I would. I would take Genty here for sure. Equivalent to an early to mid second in a 12-team league. Nah, I would take Ashton Genty here. Connor has got, this is his team. Would you try to buy or sell to upgrade? Let's see here. 10-team PBR Superflex half tight end premium. Allen Dak, that's great. Mason ETN Hendo, that's great. London BTJ, so you got some them in the. Yeah, so your issue would be wide receivers then. So I would be trying to find ways to trade up. Maybe it's 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s at the wide receiver position. If you could get rid of Jameson Williams, Waddle, Ridley. Maybe if you've got to do, even if you've got to throw London or BTJ in there, I'd probably rather move BTJ than London at this moment. Because I'm assuming that you're competing with the team that you've got right now. So if it was BTJ and Jameson Williams and a second, does that get you to Amon Ra? Does that get you to CeeDee Lamb? That could be an interesting place to start. Maybe it's JMO and Waddle, and then that gets you to I keep saying Ricky Pearsall, but maybe that gets you to Rashid Rice before he comes back. Maybe that gets you into Marv or Ladd or Garrett Wilson. That would be the ways that I would be trying to improve this team, is improving the wide receiver room by kind of upgrading, using your wide receivers to upgrade your wide receivers. If you got to throw extra picks in there or whatever to do that, then that works. But you got a pretty good team here, especially with McBride and Bowers in a tight end premium. You're starting both guys every week. Josh Allen and Dak Prescott are pretty solid. Mason and ETN are doing things right now, waiting for Henderson to come up. You've got some solid production out of your wide receivers, but can we make it better without also screwing over the longevity of your roster by trading for old guys? Or maybe it ends up you can go buy Keenan Allen, you can go buy Devontae Adams. Maybe that's a cheaper way to solve this while you're waiting out London and BTJ. Maybe you go buy Jacoby Myers or something, and then you're starting them more often than not while you're waiting for your young guys to kind of get back into that production, So that's another option as well. If you could identify aging veterans that are very productive right now on not so great teams, maybe you could pull them away for draft picks or for cheaper stuff like that. No, I would play Michael Pittman this week of the three. That's where does Paulson agree with me on that one? Paulson has Pittman at wide receiver 26. He's got T. Higgins at wide receiver 28 and Trey Tucker at wide receiver 38. So yeah, Paulson would also say Michael Pittman. DJ Moore, DK, and a 28 first for BTJ. Would you pay that? Does that even get done? Yes, I would pay that. It might get done too, depending on how that person feels about either DK or DJ Moore, or if they really hate BTJ. It might get done. I would pay that for BTJ. Trade Jamar Chase and Knicks for JSN, Stroud, and JT. Could use the running back help, but not sure if I'd hate this by the offseason. I don't hate it, honestly. Going from Chase to JSN is not terrible. Um, Getting JT would be helpful for sure. I don't love going from Bo Nix to CJ Stroud, though Bo Nix isn't really doing himself any favors at this moment. I don't know who your other quarterbacks are. Um, uh, if I'm cool with it. If you want to push your chips in, if you think that you're gonna still be competitive moving forward, and you want to push your chips in, go get JSN. That doesn't hurt your longevity, really moving from Chase to JSN. You get Jonathan Taylor, who could have a Saquon Barkley level season this year. Um, I don't know what your quarterback situation looks like to where Stroud fits in versus Nix, but um, it could be fine. I'm not opposed to this. And I don't think you would necessarily hate it by the offseason. I mean, if you win a championship, you're not going to hate it. But I think, still looking at your team and seeing Jason and Jonathan Taylor instead of Jamar Chase, I don't think that you're going to hate that still in the offseason. So I'm cool with taking the JSN side if you wanted to do that. Advice for teams that spent draft capital to compete this season, but through 3 weeks are at the bottom of the standings. Um, Lesson learned: wait for your team to tell you that they're a contender before you actually make moves to compete and trade draft capital. This is why I hate trading. I hate trading draft capital in the offseason because you never end up knowing what's going to happen in in season. Um, so I don't like trading draft capital in the offseason. So maybe there's lesson number one, Evan, is you learned to really try not to do that. uh, Try not to trade draft capital in the hopes of making your team competitive, um, or to add depth. You always want to wait to see that you are actually competitive, gather as much information as possible before you trade away those draft picks. Um, Now, so that's lesson learned for the future. Now, what do you do for where you're at right now? Um, Ideally, depending on the players that you traded for, could you recoup some of the assets that you lost? Like if you now that's probably going to end up being hard because the players that you acquired might be underperforming players. So like if you paid a second to go get Calvin Ridley, you're probably not going to be able to get a second back. If you paid for McLaurin or Evans or DK Metcalf using draft picks and they're not producing right now, um, you paid up to go get BTJ to be competitive and he's not producing. Uh, that's the hard part to where maybe depending on the players that you have, you could just take your lumps and then see where it takes you next year. I don't know what your actual roster looks like, so that's why I'm trying to speak theoretically. Uh, you're too anxious to kick off a rebuild. Well, maybe this is so that was kind of where I was leading into where this probably this probably points you towards a rebuild. So it might be a good time to really shave down age, get whatever you can for certain players at this point. Um, and you probably do need to kick off your rebuild. You're just going to be kicking it off kind of behind the eight ball, because you lost your draft capital. Try to get your draft picks back if you can, if possible. Um, especially if you traded not so much your second or your third or stuff like that, but if you traded away your 26th first and then you're rebuilding, um, you should try to get your first back before you do anything else. Before you signal to the person who has your 26th first that you are entering the rebuild, because then you're never going to get your first back. Um, so you could try to do that, but I would just it's probably a good time to just tear it down again without knowing what your actual team looks like. I it might be difficult, but that would probably be where you would take it now from here, unless you really believe that your team could still compete, and if they have a good stretch. Because I do believe I've heard Andy Holloway say this before from the fantasy footballers, and I do believe that it's true that whatever has happened can also happen in the reverse. So just because you're 0-3, you're at the bottom of the standings, bottom of the points for, doesn't mean that you could also then not go on a good run in October or in through November, and then get into the playoffs still. Uh, it's going to be harder, but it's not impossible to do that moving forward. I was trying to find where I'm at. Where is it? Is Caleb Johnson a buy or does he actually just suck? I think he's a buy. I don't think we haven't seen him actually play. And the reasons why he's being healthy scratched is because he muffed kick returns, which is weird to me because we knew coming out of Iowa that he's not like a super, receiving back. So why would you have him back there to catch passes essentially on kick return and then do something with it? And it's also super weird because I feel like you want your kick returner to be a really dynamic player. And Caleb Johnson can be a dynamic player, but I feel like his strength is more just churning yards between the tackles because he's huge. It seems like such weird misuse of Caleb Johnson, and that he didn't succeed in that misused role. So now you're penalizing him for it. And it's super weird. I still believe in Caleb Johnson. I do definitely think that he's a buy. If you can get him for a second, that's great. If you can get him for anything less than that or whatever it is, I think Caleb Johnson is a really good buy right now. To basically anybody, honestly. That team I mentioned was Hertz, Hampton, Neighbors, Marv. I mean, this is a pretty good team. So like this is one of those instances where I might lean towards the what has already happened could also happen in the reverse because Hertz is good. Hampton's going to probably pick up some steam here without Najee. Looked great last week. Neighbors, we'll have to see what happens with him and Jackson Dart. Marv might be picking some stuff up. It might be better or inconsistent. Adams is a great top 15 wide receiver right now. Pickens is about to be the wide receiver one for the next couple of weeks. Benson's about to be the RB1. Hunter Henry's a good, like, this is a situation where I would let this ride out for a little bit. Just because you don't have any draft picks right now and that you're bottom of the standings, I would let this one ride because there's a turning point for a couple of these players to where you might get better production from them as the season goes on. And then if you end up coming in 7th place and you miss the playoffs, then it is what it is. And maybe you can see that trajectory happening before it actually does. And maybe you can sell off of Devontae Adams. Maybe you can sell off of T. Higgins. Sell off of whoever for depth or anything like that. But I would let this one ride out. I wouldn't be worried. I'd be concerned, and I'm glad that you're concerned in asking the questions already about what you should do. But I would not be like kicking myself because you traded draft picks to be competitive and the zeros in the win column instead of the loss column right now. So I would just go. I would just continue going, man. I think that's a good team. They're just underperforming right now. But like I said, there's a few of those players that have good good reasons to be excited for them moving forward. And then just to round out Evan, rate this team from a scale of 1 to 10. Your wide receivers need help, so that's really what's dragging you down. But you've got Gibbs, Bucky, JT, Kyron, Monty. I give this a 7 out of 10. I would like your wide receivers to be a little bit stronger. You are too deep at running back for sure. So that's probably where I would. How can you trade Kyron plus a wide receiver for a better wide receiver? Bucky plus a wide receiver for a better wide receiver. That's where I would be shifting your running back depth and strength into wide receiver strength. You even if it's like you can offer up Gibbs if you wanted to, and then keep Bucky, JT, Kyron, and go get an elite wide receiver for Gibbs, or maybe it is Bucky and Jameson Williams, and then does that get you Neighbors or somebody like that? That's what I'd be trying to do. So that's why I think you're a very strong team. You definitely have the assets to be very productive this year, but I'm wondering if you should be moving more towards wide receivers. That's what I would be doing personally. Daniel has Jaden Daniels in his luckily 3-0 redraft, 1 quarterback lead, dropped Darnold for Geno Smith. Who should I start Sunday? I'm good with starting Geno. And then should you keep Geno rest of season or continue to stream the backup? Uh, I'd probably continue to stream the backup. Um, Honestly, if Daniels comes back and he's your every week starter, I don't know when their bye week is. But depending on the rest of your league and the quarterbacks that are available, you don't necessarily have to roster a backup quarterback. Now, if your leagues, I'm in a home league where I have to roster a backup because if I drop him, my next best option is like literally like Joe Flacco or something. So it's like everybody in that league rosters a backup. So I got to roster a backup or else I'm going to be screwed. And I don't have the streaming options. But if you have streaming options to where it's like, all right, if I drop Geno, I can still pick up Stafford, Rodgers, Penix, um, all those guys. Maybe somebody drops Goff if he's in a bad matchup or drops somebody else in a bad matchup. Um, you could kind of figure that out. So that's where I would just say you don't necessarily have to drop, or you don't necessarily have to keep a backup if your league allows it. Jane Daniels' bye week isn't until week 12. So theoretically, if he's back next week for week 5, you're getting, 6 or 7 games with him as your starter. You're probably not playing anybody off the waiver wire over Jaden Daniels. So you might be able to just drop Geno after this week if Daniels is back, and then have some other high upside handcuff or something like that. Pick up like a Brian Robinson or a DJ Giddens, and then if that running back gets hurt above them, you've now held on to like this in like really not valuable player, but now is all of a sudden super valuable. You beat the waiver wire, and maybe you could trade him and upgrade somewhere else, and then pick up another quarterback later. For week 12 for Jaden's bye week. Tim has Chase Brown ideas for holding or pivoting. These are both Dynasty 10-team Superflex. This one, I'll answer this one first because I feel like this is easier. I think Daniel Jones is a good buy for a quarterback needy team. For real, I think there's different levels of how I would rate for him being for real. I think he could be on his Sam Darnold path right now to where I think he's for real for the remainder of the year as a very quality QB2 with QB1 upside. And then either signs more of an extension somewhere else or re-signs in Indianapolis because he is on a 1-year deal, I believe, right? Yes, 1 year, $14 million deal. So assuming that he plays well, he could stay in Indianapolis and then, continue to be the guy. So I believe that he's for real in the sense that he could be, this year's Sam Darnold, who is this year's Geno Smith, just like a very quality QB2. And I would be willing to buy him in a super flex league. I probably wouldn't pay a first for him. But if it's, an early second or multiple mid to late seconds, I'm cool with that. And you can go buy him. Now, as for Chase Brown, I'd probably still hold Chase Brown because I don't think you can really sell him for all that much. And his upside, I still think is high enough that if he were to figure things out, or really, truly, since he were to figure things out with him, that's more beneficial than just selling him for whatever right now. So he is RB18 on Keep Trade Cut. Like if you could flip him for Cam Scatterbo, I'm on board with that. If you can flip him for Chuba Hubbard, or if you want Trey Benson, or you want ETN or Jordan Mason, I'm cool with trading Chase Brown and just being like, you know what, I'm competing. I'd rather have some extra points. I can move him off and go get Chuba or the upside of Cam Scatterbo for the remainder of the year, and as a rookie long term, the upside of Jordan Mason for the remainder of the year. I'm cool with that. If you want to add to him and move up and get, Kenneth Walker, maybe you could buy a little low on Josh Jacobs after his rough performance. Maybe you go buy Kyron Williams. I'm cool with that too. But I wouldn't be adding like a first to Chase Brown and move up to those guys. It's either who can I get for Chase Brown in a second? Who can I get for, if it's Chase Brown in a third for Chuba, you want to get off Chase Brown, then sure. Maybe you move Chase Brown for David Montgomery in a third. You can do that. I would just, those are the pivot options where it's just like, you got to try to see if you can get in and around Chase Brown's value for somebody that you just like a little bit more productive. But I'm also totally cool with just holding on to Chase Brown and just hoping something gets better. 10-team PPR Dynasty, give up Waddle. Yeah, I'll take a first round pick. I didn't even need to finish reading it. Take the first over Jalen Waddle. I don't think you really necessarily help a contender get better. And honestly, I think it helps you get better because if you're winning without Jalen Waddle, you just got an extra first round pick to where maybe you hit on that rookie and now your team's even better after hitting on that rookie. Or you can package that first in a bigger trade and go get somebody else and upgrade in a way that Jalen Waddle wasn't going to help you because not everybody wants Jalen Waddle, but most people will want a first round pick. So that first, I think, is a little bit more marketable in future trades than Jalen Waddle. Or you win without Jalen Waddle anyway, then you draft well in your 26 class and you hit on another rookie who's just going to help you out even more. And then more dynasty, you know? Give Jefferson, Diggs, get Kittle, Garrett Wilson, Genty. I'm taking the Jefferson side on this. No. Hmm. Ugh. If this is redraft, I'll take Kittle, Garrett Wilson, Genty. This has to be redraft because there's no way this is dynasty. Maybe it is dynasty. I don't know. In dynasty, I would no. The answer is Genty. Take the Genty side on this one. That's just so much value. I could see in dynasty if you're giving up Jefferson, if you wanted to keep Jefferson. But if this is redraft, I will take the redraft. I'll take the Genty side on this one. Because you get so many different ways to just outproduce Justin Jefferson. And Stephon Diggs, low key, might be better on the waiver wire. So, I would take the Genty side on this one. Cash Money needs to start too. Oh man, between Odunze, Adams, and Mason. Oh no, I think you got to start Mason. I just think the volume is way too high. You just got to start him. So now between Odunze and Adams. Odunze is Paulson's wide receiver 7, and Adams is his wide receiver 11. I would probably lean Odunze. I think Adams is great, but the targets might be on the Odunze side too, as more of the 1 in his offense versus Adams being more of the 2, even though he has seen 8+ targets all 3 weeks. Odunze has been incredible, and Odunze's upside is probably a little bit higher. Worst defense for Odunze. I think it's Mason and Odunze. And I'd imagine he has Mason ahead of. Yeah, he's got Mason as the flex 10, Odunze is the flex 18, and Adams is the flex 23. So Paulson would say Mason and Odunze. Christian, you're probably not seeing this, but appreciate you, man. Happy to always see you in here. We don't have very many questions left. Can I get through this and be done by 2? That would be phenomenal. These 2-hour streams are super fun, but it's like those lessons learned videos I do every week. It's like, man, by the end of it, my throat's sore. Deshaun Tucker hold on trade value is Tolbert or buy. Should I trade for a single? Should I buy for a single third? These are players I want to buy, but not sure I can move later. I would not be buying either one of these two guys. Tolbert probably doesn't have any value once CeeDee Lamb comes back. Tucker needs 2 injuries ahead of him to be valuable. I would not buy either one of these players for outright for draft picks. Fab, sure, if you can trade Fab, but I would not buy either one of these two guys for straight up. I would take Juwan Johnson this one. And I think that you win the trade. I think you win the trade if you're trading a third and Sean Tucker for Juwan Johnson. Have a starting lineup with Daniels, Achane, Travion, CD, Puka, Amon-Ra, Andrews, Kincaid, Nico Swift. Wow. Any advice on how to become better? No. You're sitting Nico Collins. No, I don't have any advice for you. You've built a monumental, astronomically insane team where you can't even start a top 10 weekly wide receiver. No, I don't have any advice for you. In all seriousness, in mostly seriousness, I don't have any advice for you. But if you wanted to, you have the assets probably even without your first this year, but you have the assets in Nico or Marv that if you just wanted to go get Brock Bowers, you could. If you wanted to upgrade your running back 2 spot to go get Bucky or JT or Saquon or whoever you wanted, Derrick Henry at your running back 2 spot, you probably could. So that's just those would be the ways that how can you most impactfully improve your RB2 and your tight end 1 spot with the fact that you're sitting Nico and Marvin Harrison every single week. Or I guess this week you're sitting CeeDee Lamb and you're playing one of them. But no, I do not have any other advice for how to become better. It's an insane team. Congratulations, Jared. Vinny, always appreciate the help every Friday. Well, I appreciate you joining in on here. What you got for me? Any advice for a team that is middle of the pack but doesn't have enough firepower to win a championship? Not much draft capital and a lot of older players like Kenneth Walker, Monty, Etienne, Evans, Sutton. Ooh, man, this is a phenomenal question. The middle of the pack in Dynasty is the absolute worst place to be, especially you don't have a lot of draft capital. And then you kind of have some of these older players that can be good, maybe can't be all that good. Inconsistent, I should say. I think my advice for you would be when I find myself more in the middle of the pack, I would rather shift my perspective and my team view into more of a retool, not so much a rebuild, but like a retool. I'd rather envision myself and think of myself as a non-playoff team who's playing more for next year than this year. And I would like to make some moves to maybe, how could you have Bijan and Neighbors as foundational pieces? Well, that's phenomenal. So like you have good firepower, maybe not enough, like you said, but you have good firepower, and maybe you just need to kind of reorganize the rest of your team and your bench into more long-term pieces who also, if they have the benefit of producing, then that could lead you into being a playoff team. And then maybe you could utilize some extra value that you have into pushing yourself into being a contender. But this is where like you have Monty, Etienne, Evans, and Sutton. I won't include Kenneth Walker in this just yet because he could still be good enough from a dynasty standpoint. He's not old enough super yet. But Monty, Etienne, Evans, and Sutton have some age on them. They've got some waning production here and there. Evans is currently hurt. Etienne currently great, but we saw him not be great last year. So what is he? Sutton's good, but he's like 29, 30 years old or whatever. That if you wanted to shift some of these guys over into younger upside players, that then if they end up hitting, then you are really a contender. But if they don't hit, then you're not screwed and you are facing more towards 2026. So I'd be curious on if you have Mike Evans, you have Cortland Sutton. Let's see. Where am I at? Can you move Cortland Sutton over to a Quentin Johnston kind of a name? Like that's where I try to find another player who is a lot younger, but maybe has more youth, more upside, can also produce, as we've seen Quentin Johnston be phenomenal. Can you move off of Sutton to go over to a Quentin Johnston type of player? Can you move off of where's Mike Evans on this list? I'm looking at Keep Trade Cut. Man, I feel like I'm too low for Mike Evans. Oh, there he is, wide receiver 42. So now we're looking around Mike Evans. I see Alec Iomanner in there. That might be a little iffy. Maybe if you wanted to hold on to Evans for Iomanner, that could work. But maybe that's another situation where it's like, okay, I'm buying into a player who seems like he really has a good connection with Cam Ward. He's producing decently already as more of the wide receiver 1 for Tennessee. And maybe he continues to grow into that role. And you're also getting the production of Alec right now, whereas Evans is currently injured. Maybe you could, move into that direction. We have Monty and Etienne they're all kind of in the same kind of range. So Monty and Etienne, maybe that's where you try to go to a Bashal Tutin's in that range. J.K. Dobbins is in there. Maybe Dobbins has found a new home that you want to move off of ETN for like a J.K. Dobbins plus third or something like that. Um, Khalil Shakir is down in there. He's a little bit younger, but could still be productive. Like those are the ways that I would probably try to see what I could do to pivot over to players that are younger, still could be productive, but shift your mindset into a slightly longer term approach that you then could get pushed into competing this year if those players that you bought end up competing. Um, the other advice would just be if you wanted to, you could tear it down. You don't got to trade Bijan and Neighbors, but like you could just sell all these guys, buy into 2026, buy into 2027, and just try it from there and take a more longer term approach. But that's where I would go. Diggs and Ridley for Caleb Johnson. Is that a pivot depending on your build? I think if you're really rebuilding, um, or entering a rebuild, I don't mind this at all to go get Caleb Johnson. So yeah, or even if you're a contender, you have an overflow of riches, and Ridley and Diggs are your wide receivers 6 and 7, and you want to take a shot on Caleb Johnson, I like that as well. So yeah, I'd probably try that. Luke's considering starting Debo over BTJ this week, but just said that Jane Daniels is out. Reluctant to start BTJ. Who would you go with? Great question. Yeah, Debo's got Atlanta. BTJ's versus the Niners. I'd probably be willing to go with Debo. Mariota is not a bad passing option still. And Debo, like he wasn't all that good last week, but I think they also didn't really need him to be because they absolutely kind of obliterated the Raiders. So I'm wondering if it's possible that they could obliterate the Falcons this week. I'm comfortable with going with Debo because I think the touch floor is pretty solid, and also the fact that McLaurin isn't going to play either. So I'm okay playing Debo over BTJ. What does John Paulson say about this? He's got BTJ at 22, Debo at 25. Although they are separated by a full fantasy point. I think this isn't a full PPR. Yeah, this isn't a full PPR. But he has BTJ ahead of Debo Samuel. Defenses are basically the same. Atlanta's 10th. San Fran is 11th. BTJ has the volume. So that's where, like, if you wanted to still try to trust into the volume and maybe trust into the game script of where Jacksonville probably is going to be playing from behind against San Francisco, you could trust into that a little bit more than maybe Debo playing ahead of Atlanta with a backup quarterback. I understand that narrative too. That's a pretty tough decision. But I'm comfortable playing Debo with Mariota still because McLaurin is still out. So if you are already leaning towards Debo Samuel and you don't want to mess around with BTJ this week, I'm totally fine with that. And I'll endorse that. If that's the way that you were already leaning. I'll take Devontae Adams. I didn't even need to read the rest of your insane roster, but yes, I'll take Devontae Adams. And then I would start AJ Brown this week. Yeah, AJ Brown isn't really practicing, but I would start AJ Brown this week. My hope is that Tampa Bay forces Philly to throw a little bit more. And we see maybe not what we saw last week where they had to throw to beat the Rams, but maybe something along the lines of what we saw more in week 2 where he's like 5 for 50 or something like that. I think I'm fine with starting AJ Brown over Devontae Adams. Paulson has Adams at 11 and Brown at 14, but they're separated by 0.2 of a fantasy point. And AJ Brown technically has the easier matchup. Tampa Bay is a worse defense than Indianapolis. So I'd start AJ Brown. More moves to make. These are hard questions to do live on air. This is one of the benefits of going into the DLF YouTube Discord, and then you can ask these kind of questions here because then we got other people that we can kind of dive into it, and it's not me answering this question live on air. But man, this is a really good team. Honestly, Like your worst spot is your tight end spot. So like if you wanted to try to upgrade off of Hawkinson or Goddard, you could try to do that. I don't know if this is dynasty or just regular redraft. So if it's dynasty and you have draft picks, you could use Hawkinson and draft picks and move up. Um, if it's regular redraft, you're probably just gonna have to trade Ellick and Hawkinson and move up, or maybe it's uh Daniel Jones and Hawkinson and move up. That would be the only place that I would really be looking at is upgrading off of Hawkinson, who could still be good. Uh, I mean, I've been hopeful with them, and they looked solid last week with the Vikings under Carson Wentz. And then maybe JJ McCarthy kind of settles down once he gets back. But that's basically the only place where I'd be looking at. How are you feeling about Bo Nix? I think he's a buy right now. He's a buy hold. I don't think he's a sell. It's only been 3 weeks, and I do think that he is in a little bit of a sophomore slump, which is totally fine. He's missed on just a few plays on big plays that I think if they connected, we would not be really super concerned about Bo Nix right now. So I think he's a very firm hold if you have him already, and he is more of a buy if you don't have Bo Nix. If anybody is panicking on him, so that's my pretty quick synopsis on him. I think he's a pretty solid buy. Am I crazy for turning down Nico for JT? My team is the best with the Nico owner being the second best. Um, no, I mean I don't think you are. I would in a dynasty, I would probably still prefer Nico, but I mean JT might just be on one of these runs where it's like he's unstoppable. 2024 Saquon Barkley, and that might be more beneficial to your team and actually winning. I mean, you've got Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown is fine. If you wanted to, I honestly, could you throw Saquon for Nico? If you want a running back and you wanted an extra wide receiver, you could try to do that. Um, but no, I don't think you're crazy for turning down Nico for Jonathan Taylor right now. Um, it's fine. CD and Amon Ra have been and continue to be in the same tier for me, so I don't really necessarily care to be honest, Phil. That's like a really bad answer, but I just don't. Um, I don't care. If you want Amon Ra, keep Amon Ra for the next couple weeks while CD Lamb's out. If you wanted CD Lamb and you prefer him over Amon Ra, then take CD Lamb. Not a good answer, but I genuinely don't care. I don't like trades like that. Thank you so much for the kind words, Tim. And I'm glad that the wide receiver forward approach has been very helpful as well. Um, Even with all the wide receivers not playing well, and we've seen some really insane running back performances like out of JT and stuff like that, I still think that is definitely the way to go. It's just kind of like a blip. Honestly, if anything, the underproduction that we've seen this year from wide receivers from London, BTJ, Ladd, even AJ Brown makes me want to go harder into the wide receiver strat because I think it's easier to buy into those guys right now, and then bet on them getting better as the season goes along, or as just long term as the years go on. uh, that it makes it easier to buy into those wide receivers because they are at a discount right now. Luke, trade Amon-Ra and Baker for Justin Jefferson and Jalen Hurts, redraft and dynasty. I would take Jefferson and Jalen Hurts in dynasty for sure, and I would also take that side in redraft. Jefferson and Jalen Hurts side in both. Mixon for Jaden Blue. Oh, I'm cool with that. Take Jaden Blue. Mixon may honestly never play again. And not to say that Jaden Blue is his trend arrow is pointing up because he's been a healthy scratch for 3 weeks now, probably about to be 4. And then Phil Maffa comes back after this week to take over as the better rookie running back that the Cowboys drafted. But obviously, there's just way more upside with Jaden Blue. And if Javonte Williams were to get hurt and they have to activate Jaden Blue, then he looks good. That I'd rather have Jaden Blue than Joe Mixon as a long-term option. Would you trade Brees and Amon-Ra for Chase and Achane with everything going on in Miami and Cincy? Um, this, yeah, this is redraft, right? So, because in Dynasty, this is Chase and Achane for sure. But in redraft, hmm, I would probably hold on to Amon-Ra and Brees only because I think Amon-Ra is just that much better than Chase right now without Joe Burrow. I would rather have Achane than Brees for sure, but I think I'd rather just have Amon-Ra and then hope that Brees Hall can do better versus having Achane and then hoping that Jamar Chase could do better. I'd rather just have Amon-Ra in this deal. For Dynasty, what can I do with Bigsby? Hold and stash or drop trade? I would hold and stash. I think he's just a solid handcuff option. It kind of sucks that all of his value kind of got tanked from being the 1B in Jacksonville to now the backup. And he might not even be the handcuff whenever Will Shipley comes back. If you want to trade him, that's fine. You could throw him into a bigger deal. Maybe the person that has Saquon would be a little interested than more interested than usual or any other managers in your league. But I think he's just a fine hold and stash. I love stashing players like him because he is only currently one injury away, but then maybe he's two injuries away whenever Will Shipley gets there. That you know that I'd rather stash a guy like Bigsby than a random wide receiver. In that kind of, I wonder who's even next to Bigsby. Bigsby or the wide receivers around him, just as an example, Malik Washington, Xavier Legette, Jalen Royals, Christian Kirk, Isaiah Bond. I'd probably just rather have Bigsby on my dynasty roster than all of those guys. You could maybe talk me into a Malik Washington. You could maybe talk me into a Jalen Royals. I highly doubt it. But I would certainly rather have Bigsby than Bond and Legette at this point. And Demario Douglas is in there. I'd rather have Bigsby. There's just those guys are seemingly more valuable because they're actually playing well and they have counting stats. But Bigsby's upside, if it hits, is so much higher if there's just an injury or two. And then Cade Otton for Jalen McMillan in a Dynasty tight end premium. I would take the Cade Otton side on this one. I think it's pretty fair, but I would take Cade Otton here just because McMillan's going to be the wide receiver 4 for the remainder of the year and then wide receiver 3 next year. So I would, in a tight end premium, I'm fine with Cade Otton. Cole, when do I start to panic on my win now team? I'm 0-3, lost the last 2 weeks by 2.5 points. Man, that is super unlucky, dude. So hopefully your luck kind of flips and you start to win. I'll call them 1-score games, like how the NFL is essentially, where you start to win these more closer games. BTJ does better. Maybe Chase Brown does a little bit more with receiving or does more with the receptions that he has been getting or scores. That would be phenomenal. So I would, if you're losing by that much, I'm curious to where you are in the points for. But if you're only losing by a total of 2.5 points through 2 weeks, that's kind of crazy. And I would ride it out for the next few weeks. Maybe, if you're 0-5, 0-6, then that's probably to the point to where you start to go. But if you're by the end of October, if you're 500 by the end of October, then I think Devontae Adams is listed as questionable. Then I think I would be fine continuing to push if you can get back to 500 or above 500 by the end of the month, October, by the end of October. Who do I start between Stafford, Dart, Rodgers, Browning, or Wentz? Oh my gosh. I'm not going to look at Paulson. What am I? I am leaning, honestly, towards Carson Wentz. So let's see where Paulson has these guys. Paulson has Dart at 21, Wentz at 27, Browning at 28, Rodgers at 30, Stafford at 16. So Paulson would stay Matthew Stafford. You know what? That's pretty fair. He's probably the safest of them. I think Wentz could against the Steelers defense, man. That could be a painful game for me as a Steelers fan, but I kind of know it's going to happen. And I'm just a fan of Carson Wentz. I like the shot on Jackson Dart. The Chargers pass defense is pretty solid. So I don't know if I would throw Dart out there just yet. I don't want to play Rodgers against Minnesota. I don't want to play Jake Browning. So the decision really truly to me is between Stafford and Wentz. Stafford is the safe play. Wentz is maybe more of the upside play because he rushes or at least can rush as well, whereas Stafford doesn't. And if you're at all worried about the limited hamstring injury that Devontae Adams is going to have coming into this game, Wentz with Jefferson, Addison back, TJ Hawkinson against the 29th ranked Pittsburgh Steelers pass defense versus quarterbacks. That's why I lean more towards Wentz personally, but Stafford is safer for sure. If his team would arguably beat you with Saquon or JT, then just hold on to both those guys. I'm cool with it. I'm cool. I understand you got to go win the championship, and if you're trading with your number one competitor, keeping the running backs, if he really needs a running back, I'm totally fine with it. Play keep away instead of optimizing your lineup. Henderson or Breece Hall, I'll go Breece Hall there. Andrews or Juwan, I'll go Juwan. Chuba or 27 first, I will take the first round pick over Chuba Hubbard. I love Chuba a lot, but I'll take the first. I got time for one more, Connor. I got to hit. There's another one or two. But yes, I have time for one more. Dynasty PPR 1 tight end premium, send Njoku and Amon-Ra for Kittle in London. Hold on. Dynasty, I'll take London and Kittle. That extra PPR for Kittle is going to be magnificent whenever he returns. And Amon-Ra is doing great things. London, we've seen him doing great things. He's just not right now. So I think this is a good opportunity. I'll buy low on the Drake London here and buy in for the upside of Kittle whenever he comes back next week. Or is it next week or the week after? Week after, it might be week 6, I think. 2 weeks. Week 6. So yeah, I'll take London and Kittle here. I think that's better for the long term. But then also if London starts producing well again and then Kittle comes back with that extra tight end premium, that's going to be a major upgrade over David Njoku. That could help you a lot for the remainder of the year, not just long term for Dynasty too. Tear down from Amon-Ra for Ladd and a first and a full rebuild. I'll do it. I like this trade from both sides a lot. If you're in a full complete rebuild, Ladd and a first is probably the better option to just kind of break down one of your best assets into another really good, still top 15, maybe even still top 12 dynasty wide receiver in Ladd McConkey. And then you get the extra first that if you hit on that would be great. Cole, you're currently third in points for, behind 3 from second. Yeah, you just got to keep going, man. You've had incredibly terrible luck. So I would just keep going. And my hope for you, honestly, is that by the end of October, you are above 500. If this is how good your team is still producing and you just had some really incredibly unlucky matchups. You sold me on Wentz. Hopefully he hits then. Hopefully he hits tracks. Mariota just got activated. Do I start Geno, Mariota, or Jared? I have Jared, but Cleveland's scary. I would start Mariota, honestly. Paulson has this. Paulson actually has Geno. I would start Geno. I take that back. Geno was my sneaky start in my video with Paulson for the 4for4 YouTube channel this week that dropped this morning. So yes, I would start Geno Smith. I think he's a sneaky play for like 303 this week. I would have played Mariota over Jared Goff, but I will start Geno Smith out of these 3. JCM for a 27 first. Dude, I've been saying to sell JCM for a second. If you can get a first for him, that's incredible. Should we try to do any moves here for a repeat champ? Lamar, great. JT, great. Mason, great. Puka, great. Jason, great. Tet, great. Odunze, no. Uh, you're in a pretty similar boat to where the other team that was really great, they had Hawkinson as their tight end one that was their more obvious hole. So Ertz is kind of your more obvious hole here. So if you wanted to upgrade off of Hertz, you can. How do you do it? Um, Ertz and a pick, Ertz and Flowers for an upgrade at tight end. Maybe that gets you Tyler Warren or somebody like that. That would be I I I would not touch base. I'll reword it this way: if you wanted to upgrade off of Ertz or Likely, whoever the other guy prefers, and use Flowers or Godwin to do it, I'm on board with that. Or draft picks, if this, assuming that this is Dynasty. Yeah, Dynasty. It even says Dynasty. Read Addison. So yes, if you have extra draft picks and you want to upgrade off of Ertz for a better tight end, I'm cool with that. If you want to use Flowers or Godwin to upgrade, I'm cool with that. If you just want to vibe with Ertz, I'm cool with that too. I think your team is really good, and you should be uh, on your way to having pretty decent odds of winning your championship again this year. So, fantastic roster, man! Congratulations, and see where this takes you. Bo Nix or Patrick Mahomes? This one's a Paulson question. He has Mahomes ranked at QB5, Bo Nix ranked at QB10. I think I agree with that as well. Mahomes has been running a lot, so I feel like the running upside that Bo typically would have, I think, is being mitigated because Mahomes is scrambling a lot too. And then I think Mahomes, especially with Xavier Worthy back this week, playing in a very high over/under game, with less of a possibility of them killing Baltimore. Whereas I think Denver could just kill Cincinnati, and then he doesn't need to throw as much. I would play Patrick Mahomes this week. That's the place I would go. I have McBride and Bills defense, but also Fannin and Lions. Who do I drop for Mariota? Well, let's see. Who do the Lions play the Bengals next week? Oh no. I would drop Fannin. You're never gonna play Fannin over Trey McBride. So keep the defenses. Bills for this week. I don't even know who they play next week, but I'm cool with keeping the Bills and playing them this week against the Saints. And then they play the Patriots next week, but Detroit also gets Cincy next week. So you might want to play Detroit next week. And you're never going to play Fannin over McBride. So drop Fannin, pick up Mariota. Or I would pick up Geno. Sorry. Yeah. I would pick up Geno and play Geno this week over Mariota. This is really what the world needs. I think we all just need to come together and really hope that Drew Petzing is one of the first coaches to get fired. And that's terrible to say, but for him as a human being. But for Marvin Harrison Jr., please, man. If you had to, would you drop Stevenson, Sharps, Addison, Jennings, or Pittman? I think it's between Stevenson or Jennings. And I lean Stevenson with you because I think it's just inevitable that Travion takes over at some point. And Jennings is a good play, assuming that he is healthy. I think has much more upside than Stevenson does. So if you had to drop any one of these guys, I'm on board with dropping Ramondre. And we're done. Dart. Easy. Low key, I hope Jackson Dart has a great game this week against the Chargers. I know it's kind of become a little bit popular to think that the Giants could cover the spread against the Chargers this week and possibly even win. But man, Jackson Dart, I think, is just going to be a really, really good quarterback. So I'll take Jackson Dart over Kyler in Dynasty. So yeah, so that is it. I've been live for 2 hours and 15 minutes after a little bit of a late start due to internet issues earlier before the stream started. So thank goodness I did not have any internet issues during the actual stream. We got that solved and it was perfect. Um, appreciate everybody for who's your favorite dynasty piece. Do I know what dynasty piece means? Dynasty player? I'll answer it, Connor, but I'm curious. I don't know if I understand what dynasty piece means. Dynasty player to buy? That's my another clarifying question. Sorry. You can fully flesh out the question if you wanted to at the but I'm looking at Bleacher Nation breaking news updates. We haven't really gotten anything. And people are messaging me for work. Gross. Um, favorite dynasty player to buy and tracks up to buy and sell right now. Tremendous questions. Favorite dynasty player to buy and sell. Let's take a look. Shall we? I'm just looking through keep trade cut. No, you're good. You're good, man. I'm very curious because I actually don't know the answer to this either. So, um, I'm gonna just read the names off as I say them. Then we're gonna try to condense them down. Tedero McMillan. These are dynasty buys. Tedero McMillan. London and BTJ, I think, are in that range as well, as is Lad. I think all those guys are pretty tremendous buys right now. Anybody else? I've said Ricky Pearsall a few times, so I think that he's just on the list. I don't think I would categorize him as my favorite buy, but I would throw him in on the list. Travis Hunter to a degree as well. I like buying Cortland Sutton. I like buying Jacoby Myers. I like buying Keenan Allen if you can. I love buying Devontae Adams right now. I like buying Michael Pittman. I like buying Jalen Warren. I like buying Jake Ferguson. I like a lot of those guys. I think my favorite dynasty buy is probably Tet McMillan. Just because I think like he's currently listed as the wide receiver 11 on Keep Trade Cut, and I think that he has the ability to by the end of the year be a top like 6 or 7 dynasty wide receiver. Like I could see him jumping Odunze, jumping Nico, jumping Ibuka, possibly even jumping JSN or CD Lamb or I don't like he's 4 years younger than Justin Jefferson. 4 years younger than CD Lamb, 3.5 years younger than Amon Ra. And I just think he is going to be such an incredibly talented fantasy and dynasty wide receiver that I think I would categorize Tedero McMillan as my favorite dynasty buy right now, with honorable mentions going to London, BTJ, Lad McConkey. Sells, I think Saquon Barkley is a great sell right now. As I'm just reading off more of the names. I think Saquon's a good sell. James Cook is a good buy, I think, right now too, as is Quinshon Judkins. I think Kenneth Walker is a good sell. I think Pickens is a good sell. I think ETN Javante, I think are good sells just for the production that they're giving. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I've said it multiple times. I just think he's a good sell because I think the hype is way past his actual production or his projected production. So yeah, so I don't know if I necessarily have like a favorite sell. I always think that Stroud's a good sell. I'm cool with selling Kyler Murray if you're just kind of done with him. So I don't know if I have a favorite sell, but those are like kind of the top names that kind of come to my mind Jameson Williams too, I think, is also a sell. He might be my favorite sell just because I think he's young enough. We saw the production last year. There's hope, there's upside. He's got the new contract extension, but he's just not producing. So I think Jameson Williams is another great buy or great sell. I'm sorry. Another great buy that just came to my head is still 2026 first round picks. I still think that they're really good buys right now. And we're gonna have somebody said that I should do a marker update kind of at the end of October, beginning of November. So I have that on the schedule. Um, so I will be doing a kind of early preview for the early preview for the rookie class for 2026. And I have a good feeling based on how some of the players have already been producing in college so far that if they kind of continue doing that, plus any other emergences as the college football season continues to go along, that we could have a pretty solid class that buying 2026 picks right now are pretty good. This is Geno Smith, Mando. I would start Geno. And there we have it. Connor and Trax got me at the buzzer. Keep me talking. But I appreciate everybody for hanging out with me for the past almost 2.5 hours now. This is one of my favorite parts of the entire week, if not my actual favorite part of the week. So yeah, that's where we're gonna end it. I hope everybody has a tremendous rest of your Friday, and a tremendous weekend as well. I hope all of you guys win all of your matchups or lose your matchups. If you are rebuilding and you want to lose your matchups, I hope you lose them. But mostly I hope you guys win all of your matchups. Have a phenomenal weekend. Enjoy any of the remaining weather that we might have, depending on where you guys are located. I know it's supposed to be nice for me, I believe, this weekend. So I would like to enjoy some of it. And yeah, I'm terrible at outros, so I'm just going to end it. Appreciate everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Great weekend. We'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.